Penultimate segment of this week's episode of Implicit Bias. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. This is the Mr. Lester's top secret podcast lair, the TSPL. We're not Mr. Lester's here. We'd like to emulate it at least a little bit. I'd love to be the only five-star restaurant between New Orleans and Houston, but you know, it is what it is. We are having so much fun this week on Implicit Bias. The crew is dug in. They've got plenty of samples of weekly whiskey, which means they're well lubricated, which means that we have got so much fun stuff to talk about. So this is one that is very specific. We've already talked about our cigar of the month. If you want to catch that, Renee telling you about the Amazon Basin cigar, you can go find that on our socials, which would pair really well with our Remus. It would pair well with the Forbidden series, the Bluestone Manor that's available at Mr. Lester's. You can catch all that on our socials anywhere you find podcasts. But this is a story because we talked about governmental mismanagement a little bit in hour one when we talked about the California fires. Ultimately, I'm curious, Walker, because you're the youngest one in here. At 6.5 years old, Walker, I'm curious, what is your understanding of if someone wants to challenge a constitutional law and it goes as high as it can go? What's the highest place that a challenge to a U.S. law can go? Do you know what that is, Walker, or what's your thought process on that?
Like through the Supreme Court, through the Senate and things like that?
Okay, the Supreme Court. It
Yeah.
stops at the Supreme Court says this is or is not constitutional, correct?
Yes.
So the Supreme Court...
Hold on, let me check my blood pressure.
Yeah, I know Caleb's going to get riled up on this one. The Supreme Court, not too long ago, completely destroyed the Chevron deference and said, if you are a bureaucrat who is not a senator, you're not a congressman, you didn't make law, you don't get to interpret law the way that you want to. And it was literally over pistol braces on rifles. The Supreme Court said, the ATF, yeah, I know you tried to reclassify all of the rifles with pistol braces as short barrel rifles and struck it down. So Caleb, I know you're checking your blood pressure.
Yep.
I want you to tell us what the ATF did.
So to preface that, it started off actually with Department of Energy.
That's how the Chevron deference came into play.
Well, before that even was the classification of, after that, the classification of dishwashers. Because the government came in and said, like, well, these dishwashers have to be low E, do this, do that. And they said, whoa. This is what the law says. You can't interpret it differently than what the law says and what lawmakers say. And they challenged that, went to the Supreme Court, and it was upheld. Hey, you can't do this crap. ATF came out and said, we're going to make this worksheet. And if no one else saw the worksheet, which I hope to God you didn't, it was Chinese calculus. And Chinese calculus, for those of y'all who don't know, get the finger ready, Walker, is hard as fuck.
Oh, he caught it.
Yeah.
He caught it.
So
Well done,
I
Walker.
warned you.
Good
you were
catch.
paying attention. And so it didn't make sense. And they said, just because you put a brace on the firearm does not change the way it was intended or intended to be shot and designed. The brace was not meant to change the function of the firearm. And it was shot down. And they said, the ATF, you cannot reclassify something that was once legal, is the most popular firearm in the United States and used for sporting and recreation. And the ATF came out with an email recently because a gentleman emailed the ATF about a CZ Scorpion and said, look, if I put a brace on this, and he was curious, if I put a brace on this, do I have to register it? We had a period a while back where we could register our firearms free of the $200 tax stamp, but you still had to register them, issue with that. And it was now classified as an SBR. And the email...
Short barrel rifle, for those who
yes,
don't know.
And the email pretty much says, and I'm paraphrasing, we don't care about that. If you put a brace on it, it is now an NFA item and mandatory should be registered and paid a $200 tax.
In other words, the ATF told the Supreme Court, Walker, get ready. They straight up told them to go off.
They said,
to go themselves.
We don't care about what you say. We don't care about the judicial branch. The ATF is an arm of which branch?
The ATF is what, the executive branch?
Executive branch.
It's executive.
They said, this is our directive. This is what we're being told. We're following orders. Piss off.
Renee, you want to chime in on this before we go down this rabbit hole?
I mean, it gets to the point that, okay, now if you have the Supreme Court says one thing, executive branch says something else, how do you clarify that? How do you...
The judicial branch, which said...
Well, and this won't be heard because the Supreme Court's going to say, we already addressed this.
Yeah.
This is the way this should be.
Way it is.
Yeah, and here's the bigger problem. The bigger problem is, who's going to go tell the ATF? What are they going to do to the ATF if they show up at somebody's house?
There's no checks and balances
There's
them.
There's no physical check or balance, correct, for the ATF.
You know, as of today, 4 more days, there'll be a new director in ATF.
Well,
and maybe that guy might have common sense and go, y'all need to shut the hell up. And we're not doing this.
What would make more sense is if we would say, sorry, ATF, we don't need you because the FBI already does this.
Yeah.
IRS already manages taxes, which the TTB is part of the ATF, which manages your taxes. Don't get that. The IRS does that. We pay them. We pay them too much for that.
Sounds like Doge needs to get involved with the ATF.
Yeah, but who's going to manage the explosives?
Well, that would be under the FBI as well. They already handle the background checks and the licensing. The ATF just happens to be the medium that is chosen to do that.
Ring the bell. This is the problem with government redundancy. This is the effective hate crime that is the U.S. government. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is murder's already illegal. If, it was a hate crime murder, now the penalty, it's already illegal. Why do we need another law to make it illegal again? And that's what we have.
It's illegaler.
Because we have the Department of Redundancy department.
Yeah, we do. And that is the problem. All right, Walker, I'm going to ask, how much time do we have left in this segment? Because I'm thinking something here. Be careful. I might hurt myself.
About 3 minutes.
Oh, it's more than enough for you.
Perfect. What we are going to do is we are going to take a break now. We're going to add that 3 minutes to the next segment because the next segment, this is where we're going to get deep down the rabbit hole. We're going to talk JFK assassination when we come back on this week's episode of Implicit Bias Radio.